NationalKhabar. I'm Shweta Ranjan, and on the World Music Day special series, today we have with us a world-famous percussionist and composer, Bernhard Schimpelsberger, popularly known as Talis. Talis means related to talas, and a unique percussionist, Bernhard has found a way of transforming and translating the tabla bowls, incorporating on the drums. How does he connect a tabla rhythm with other music genre? How does he unify the percussion traditions of India and the West? Let us meet Bernhard today on the show. Hello and welcome to the show, Bernhard.
Hello, greetings to India. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so let me address you as Talis, which you are popularly known as.
I will prefer Bernhard.
Okay, so firstly, to start with, we would want you to give your own musical introduction. The viewers have been waiting to meet you for the special day. They have been eagerly looking forward. So one musical introduction, and then we start with the conversation.
Great. I will do something small. I'm here in my office because my studio where I have all the big drums, unfortunately, the internet doesn't work well there. So what you see is my library and office, and I've brought a few small instruments to try. This is a flute from Norway, a willow flute that the shepherds use in Norway to call their cattle. And I'm going to use the language of tabla and also the Carnatic rhythm language called konako, which maybe of you have heard. All these kinds of rhythms, I'll speak about that later. But I can speak them, and then I can straight away express them through the flute, and it sounds a little bit like this. If I say
How beautiful, but a percussionist that you are, how did you get attracted to this flute?
Yes, it's a good observation, because a percussionist should be hitting things, isn't it? Not blowing things. Well, the beautiful thing about percussion is really that, you can incorporate so many different instruments into your setup. It's not like you have to play just the drums or you have to play just the tabla, for example. Percussion means, yes, ideally you should be able to bang it, but in my research, you can say I'm always looking for melodic elements. So, I like to have drums where I can play the beat and the groove, but I also look for instruments which can produce melodies. And that's how the flute came about. And without any shame, I just grabbed it and I put it into my collection of instruments.
So I believe you have a good collection of percussion instruments from all over the world. What are the special ones, and do you try them all?
Yes, I mean, every instrument is like a new member of the family. I know it sounds very cheesy, but it is really true. Every sound that I hear and that I bring, it sort of takes it's time to come into the family, and I do have a lot, and I love collecting and I love searching as well. I mean, for example, this morning I was making instruments out of keys. So just old keys from the door, and you put them on a string, and then you can play them like this, and it's a beautiful texture. It makes this sort of ghostly atmosphere, and you can do the same thing with bottle caps and with wooden pieces and things like that. And so there's a lot of different kind of instruments, and a few of my favorite ones, you can say, I'm just discovering, I know after such a long time, I'm discovering this, which is called kanjira, which is from India.
Yes, and it comes from.
Yeah, and I have sort of found out when I traveled to Cuba and when I traveled to Brazil and when I was playing with percussionists there, they play a similar instrument called pandero, which is also a frame drum, but you play it with a Brazilian technique. And I found this instrument to be an amazing communicator, because you can take it with you. You can straight away start to play, and the sound, as you can hear, it's actually, you couldn't say it's an Indian sound. You can say, yes, I've heard this instrument in Indian classical music, in Carnatic music, but the sound itself, it's so universal, and that's one of my favorite ones, but it takes a lot of practice, I have to say, and I'm not as good yet as I want to be.
Okay, so let me take you to your childhood days. Let us revisit those days when your first interaction with music happened, and how have you evolved? What was the day when you decided that you want to be a musician? So could you just share it with our viewers to inspire
Sure.
them, to encourage them?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I come from a musical family, but not like in the Indian sense, where the ancestors are also musicians. My parents were actually they have a piano shop. So
Yeah.
my father was a piano tuner, and we were all amateur musicians. My mother and everybody plays the piano in my family. So we always had a piano at home, and there was always jam sessions, we'd all gather around the piano, and my dad would play, and then he would take the guitar, and then my mother would stay on the piano, and we play like popular songs. And that was really my introduction to music. And I love these moments. We formed a band when my mother. Sorry?
A family band.
Yes, a family band, exactly. And my mother stayed on the piano. My father went to played the bass, and my brother was quite serious about playing the guitar. And then I played the drums, and we would play every Sunday morning.
Wow.
And those were wonderful moments. And it was not like that it was necessarily going towards a professional level, but just that joy of music, and the connection. And my brother and I, all week, we would be looking for music, for songs that we could try. And those were sort of the early memories. And then I started to play in my school, and I was very active, and I started to put the band together with different colleagues, friends in school. And then I realized, there was so much positive things happened around that. We started to play in school, and the teachers really appreciated what we did, and we also got around, and we played.
I was listening to your conversation somewhere where you said that when the teacher he overheard you play some of the boys together, then he asked you to do a concert after a few days, and you were very confident to say yes, you can do. And for how many hours you want me to play? So were you really confident that day? And how did it happen? Creating music for 1 hour is not an easy task at that age. I think you were 12 at that time.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been like this. Music has always been my playground, and it still is totally to this day, and I never felt that I could fail. I mean, it was always like, let's do something, let's try something, let's just do it. And it was never like, oh, I have to be afraid, because in a way you cannot really, make mistakes. I mean, when you play from your heart, you're doing, you're just creating something. And when we were young, that was really for me a place where I could put all my energy and all my aspirations, and that's actually shortly, I realized how good the music was and how good I felt playing it. And then when I was 14, actually, I decided, and I told my parents, it is quite interesting, because usually parents could have this discussion with their son when he's maybe 18, before going to college or something, like, I want to do this. And then they might say, no, why don't you go for engineering, or you should become a doctor, or, whatnot, get a proper job, right? But I told them when I was 14. So they were then, we had some discussions, and they were like, are you sure, you really should think about a livelihood and so on. But because I stayed so focused, by the age of 16, they were like, okay, he's decided. That's it. There's no use of us, And it's not that they wanted to push me in another direction. They just wanted to make me aware that, this is a life as a musician.
It's
possibly a freelance musician. You're self-employed. You will have to find work. It's not a steady job like being a doctor or a lawyer. And they just wanted to make me aware of that. And by the age of 16, they gave up. I mean, they're like, okay, we've told him, he's still on track. Let him do.
by the age of 18, you traveled to India first time.
Yeah.
And first time when you came here, you had already made up your mind that you want to learn from um, a very, very popular artist, Pandit Suresh Talwalkarji. And how was the experience first time traveling to India? Your parents must be really hesitant to send you. And were you clear in your mind that time that you would be able to incorporate the two different things together?
Yeah. Well, it was all a big experiment, really. Because also there is not that you have to imagine. So now this was about 20, no, maybe 18, 17, 18 years ago, in 2002, So now this fusion music has really opened up, and you have so many people following, and so you have also so many Indian musicians learning Western music. But just go back 17 years or go back 30 years, it was the exposure was much less. So this idea that I could make this journey, my life, to play to learn Indian rhythms, and then sort of create something good out of it, create my own music, also play with musicians all over the world, and to sort of, let's say, adopt a language which will allow me to play with people from all over the world. And this was a lifestyle that I was really hoping that I could achieve, this open life with, musicians from everywhere. But we didn't really know, whether after, what will happen if I see this through, in the sense, I've been with my Guruji for 20 years, and I will always be, very well, Guru Shishya Parampara.
Yeah.
Which is the way how I learned. I learned from him in the traditional way, which is another reality, really. It's going into really focusing your life in a different way. And now I can say, after all these years, it's given me so much richness. I mean, it's given the philosophy of his teachings, the philosophy of Indian rhythm. They have given me, they really are the foundation of how I interact with the world, you can say. Of course, I bring in different things. I do work with Western orchestras and so on. And there's always learning, and I love to bring new elements and learn more things. But I really have this foundation, and therefore, this time was really important when I started to come, because when you're young, it's these impressions. You're a sponge. You take everything.
So when you came here to India, and Guru Shishya Parampara that you just spoke about, how precious that is. This word Guru Shishya Parampara, how precious do you think it is?
I think it's really, how should I say? I think, as Guru and Shishya, they are both looking for each other. It's not enough for a Shishya to look for a Guru. It doesn't work that way. It's also the Guru who finds the Shishya. Because the Shishya is like a vessel. The Guru sees, the Shishya becomes a medium for the art, because the art has to live on. The art cannot just stay with the Guru, it has to spread and has to be taken ahead and change and develop and evolve. And so when you have this luck or kismet, or however, you want to call it, that you find a teacher who is really with you on the same wavelength, it's the biggest blessing, And I've always found that this was worth really dedicating myself to. I never looked at it like I'm going to stay for 2 years with my Guruji and then I'm going to check out some other teachers. Never. For me, it was also, I mean, I would love to, all the viewers, many of you may know him, Pandit Suresh Talwalkar ji. He's also Tal Yogi. He got Tal Yogi and Padma Shri and whatnot, and so many awards, he's been given already, which I cannot mention now all, but Suresh Talwalkar ji, he's an ocean of rhythm. And for me to meet him, also at this age, one thing you have to imagine, that many times Western musicians, they would come to India after their formal studies. So maybe when they're 30, 35, they decide, I always wanted to go to India, but maybe, they will be already very much, steady in their life. They will maybe already have a teaching job or have a family and so on. But I was 15 when I met my Guruji, and I was 18 when I came. So I came really at a time where I was just like so open, and I was also open to the culture, and that's why I took in, and I learned so much about Indian culture because I was ready for it. I really wanted to, learn as much as possible. So I was very lucky.
That's brilliant. So let me tell the viewers, if you have any questions, you can write down. We are going to include your suggestions, questions, wishes during the interview. So let me include a few. We have G.V. Subramanyam ji, a very dedicated viewer. He writes, "Greetings, Bernard. Good evening, Shweta of National Khabar." So
Thank you, sir.
we
Good
have
afternoon from London.
we have Ashutosh Shekhar writing, "Hi, good morning." We have Shehzad Ahmed, a drummer. He's also a drummer. Uh, he's been teaching the students out here in Delhi for quite some time. It's very nice how beautiful you are playing when you are playing the flute.
Thank you.
Very creative, he wrote. And we have Malini Shastri ji. She writes, "Hello, Bernard sir and Shweta ji." And we have Shankar Narayan Subramanyam. He's a Pakhavaj artist in Mridangam. Namaskarams, he writes. And we have Rudraksh. "Good afternoon, sir," he writes. And when you were speaking about Guru Shishya Parampara, Malini Shastri ji writes, "Very true, well said about the nature of Guru Shishya Parampara." So she really loved your answer. And Rudraksh also writes, "Very well explains the Guru Shishya binding." So I would request the viewers to keep writing. And also, let me take you ahead. After you met Tal Yogi Pandit Suresh Talpalkarji, the life took a new turn, and you incorporated the tabla bowls on the drum kits. How how did you think that this would happen, and why did he tell you or guide you not to learn tabla? Basically, you learned the tabla bowls. So why did you both together decide mutually not to do it?
Yeah, well, the credit goes to him really, and you can see what kind of a visionary he is. I mean, I should say about him, he was one of the first teachers, to start as a tabla player, start teaching Kathak dancers what we call lay and tal. So lay, the tempo, and tal, the rhythms, the cycles, and also laya shastra, which is the science, the grammar behind it. And then people started to come and learn from him, and he was the first one to start teaching drummers. And in fact, his first student was Mukul Dongre, a fantastic drummer who lives in Mumbai. Maybe some of you will know him. And his second student was the great Trilok Gurtuji, who is a legend. Yeah. I mean, and who has had a big impact in the world of rhythm. So really, my Guruji believes that rhythm is so powerful, and that you can share. If you learn the Lai Shastra of tabla, you can start to incorporate into your own instrument. So first of all, he was open to that, but at the same time, he believes that the teaching style should be very traditional. So he doesn't alter the compositions. He will teach you the hardcore, really the solid material, the real Lai Shastra. And then when I was 16, 17, I was very much fascinated by Trilok Ji, and I had watched all of his performances and so on. And he mixes drums and tabla. So I was actually thinking, it will be great to play tabla because, it's another instrument. And he said to me, "Do you want to be a tabla?" My Guruji said, "Do you want to be a tabla player or a drummer?" I said, "I want to be a drummer." Then he said, "Then don't learn the tabla because you are now 16 years old. My tabla students come to me when they are 3 or 5, and you will always be a second-class tabla player, And if you start to learn tabla, I will have to make you play da, dir de kit, din, dir de kit, for hours, for days, just for you to get a sound on the instrument." And he said, "Spend all this time, spend the same focus, the same energy, and learn the Tal Shastra, the Lai Shastra." So it was really his. I mean, he in fact said this legend. Sent the quote was, "I will not allow you to play tabla," which was fantastic.
He could sense that find out what is more important for you, since you were already 16 years old, and he had seen you play drums in Austria. That was, I think, when he traveled to
Yeah,
Austria for a
that's
performance.
right. And
And
I was doing jazz at the time, you know. I was performing a lot. I was performing with professional musicians. I was performing with people twice my age usually, because I was a young kid. So I could play, you know. I could have just become a jazz drummer, which is what I wanted to do before I met my Guruji. I was really planning to go to New York and go into jazz drumming and, you know, play hardcore jazz. So really, the fact that my Guruji didn't want to change me, you know, he just said, let's add something, and let's add something very fundamental. Let's give you a good foundation, but don't change your voice. I mean, that in itself is a beautiful thing.
so, can the viewers have a small glimpse of the tabla bowls on the percussion instrument that you have in your hand right now? Kanjira, I
Sure.
think your drum kit is in the studio, and
That's right. I don't have the drum kit here, but I will play a little piece on the kanjira.
yeah, sure.
And what I will do is I'd just like to explain. So a big difference between Indian and Western rhythm, you could say, is that so in Indian rhythm you will have a rhythm, a composition that you will play, and maybe first you will recite it with the bowls, and then you will play it. This is the standard way of presenting rhythms. But on the drum kit, for example, one of the main things is that I have two hands and I have 2 feet, and they can do different things. It's called polyrhythm. So I can do boom, boom, boom on the leg, boom, 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 boom with the left hand. I can add this, and then I even with the left foot or with the voice. So this idea of polyrhythm, of keeping several rhythms with several limbs and doing other things on top of it. So I'm just gonna apply a little bit of that to the drum, in the sense that I will keep a rhythm here and then I will recite on top, and I will improvise using the language, using the bowls.
Certainly.
So sort of a little bit of a contemporary approach.
Yeah.
Can you see well? You just see, yeah. Cool.
Beautiful that was. So, to be this unique, do you think an artist needs to be innovative in the approach towards rhythm and music, Bernard?
I think every musician has a different journey, you know, and every musician has a different scope of how much they want to branch out into new things. You know, some people would want to stay with something more traditional, you could say, which is already formed, you know, which is already has been passed, you know, on, and there's a very strong form, and then stay with that and sort of mastering, you know, the fundamentals of that, and then innovate within that. and those innovations can be quite minute, but they're still meaningful. And other people want to sort of branch out and maybe break it a bit more, and the sort of the contemporary Western approach. I mean, this is something that's quite interesting to combine as well, is because the classical, Indian classical music has to be guarded. It's something that's been passed down for generations. You cannot just come into the room and break a glass. You got to really know why you're doing things, and which means you have to study. But for example, Western contemporary music is much more open. So where you can, start to innovate based on certain experimentations, like just based on sound. For example, you wouldn't have to respect a tala or a raga. Of course, if you look at Western classical music, again, it's different. There's a whole lineage, of great composers and different traditions that have established that. But in a contemporary sense, in a Western contemporary sense, I can be much more liberal, and I can start to pull things together, without having to justify. But within the classical setting, I really have to justify, why am I bringing this sound in? Or if you play a raga or a tala, why are you using this kind of composition? What is the relationship between the source and your innovation in a way? So in my case, this is one of the reasons why I love being a percussionist, because I love sounds, and I love the liberty of bringing sounds together and looking for new sounds. To be honest, just playing the drums, it's my foundation, but all the little things that you see here, I love that. So for me, being innovative, and pushing yourself and pushing the boundaries, it is very important.
So we have some guests. I would like to include them here. We have Pandit Vijay Shankar Mishra ji. He's a very renowned musicologist and author of many books. He writes, I also support Guru Shishya Parampara. Tal Yogi Pandit Suresh Talwalkar is a genius of his time, of this time, he writes. And we have Ashutosh Shekhar writing, so beautifully explained the lay and tal. Hats off to you, to your love for Indian music. Okay, we have renowned Shahnai player Sanjeev Shankar with us.
I love Sanjeev Bhai is one of the most beautiful musicians that I have met in India.
He writes, Talis Bhai, good to see you. And we have Sunita Buddhiraja ji, again a very renowned personality. She has written many books, very popular books on artists too and their lives. It's important to know the direction you want to take and stick to it. Only with a focused mind you can achieve what you want to. And we have Piyush Raj, a young Kathak dancer. From Mumbai, he writes, Wah, kya baat hai? He's been watching you. You have a connection with Kathak also, Bernhard.
Yes.
We can talk about that too. And Malini Shastri ji is writing mind-blowing. G.V. Subramaniam ji is writing excellent demonstration with explanation. And when you were playing, Sunita Buddhiraja ji writes absolutely mind-blowing. And we have a renowned tabla player, and he also has done experiments with the drum too. Lovely, nice work in Five Brothers.
Great, somebody recognized the five. I'm glad about that. Thank you, sir.
Kritika Mishra, absolutely fantastic. Vijay Shankar Mishra ji writes, wow, excellent. So this is how the viewers have been responding, and they are getting to know your life and your point of view towards Indian music. Is it difficult to incorporate the two, the Western music and Indian classical, being in the complete discipline? And when it comes to incorporating the two, is it difficult?
I would say yes, and to be honest, it's a lifelong journey, and I would not like to claim that I have achieved a lot. To be honest, it's a lifelong journey as a student. You keep learning and you keep finding that balance. The balance changes as well. When you're younger, you want to run very fast. When you get older, you sometimes want to look at other aspects. And yes, of course, it's not easy, but the main thing is study, and time. I mean, that's the main for me. It's not to try and run, it's not because you want to show the world how great you are, it's more for the passion. At least in my case, I can say it's the passion and the love for it, and the satisfaction that you get from learning and discovering new things. and I wouldn't like to claim that I have invented whatever this. No, I mean, all these rhythms are there, it's just they just come together in this moment, and maybe you are the one who brings them together, and then there's many other people who also do great things. But I think really the difficulty is when you are, as I said, when you're working with classical music, is that you have to respect the classicism, and that takes time. And that's why when I say you don't have to run, you have to take your time and yeah, and don't just throw things together very quickly, but actually, do it well and with patience.
So, what are the factors that influence your music?
Well, for me, again, when I was younger, I was very much interested in the rhythms that I play, and in the, let's say, things should be spectacular and exciting and so on. But now, the older I get, for me, it's more about the emotion. It's really about, whatever I'm doing, it's an expression of myself. It's an honest of expression of how I am and how I see the world and how I relate to the world and the place that I have in this world. So the elements are really can be political, like right now, of course, we are all very much affected by this terrible situation. Also, with I don't know how much aware you are in India about the Black Lives Matter movement. I have many Afro-American friends, musicians, and of course, this is an important thing for me. Looking, trying to change in this world. So this is something also in my projects, by inviting lots of different musicians, and making us all feel the same. We're all the same. Nobody's better. Nobody's is less or more. So it can be something political like this, or personal things. And really, I think I'm striving to bring out honestly what is inside of me, with honesty and being authentic about that, and therefore creating an emotion that then can be also shared by my audience, by people who hear it. I don't necessarily need them to go, oh wow, whatever, some crazy Chakradarti high, or something, but I would like them to feel something, and maybe in a moment when they need support, they can come back to the music and they can listen to the music, and they feel like their life is just getting a little bit better because of the music. And the same thing happens with the performances. When we perform, the beauty is to bring people together in one room. And that, I don't know if you have thought about it in this way, but one of the amazing things is that when you perform, that group of people will never come together again in this way, in this exact way, and you're creating something, and collectively everybody is a part of that energy. And that's also, in a way, takes me very much back to why I am a musician, because I like that, people coming together, sharing something positive, experiencing something together, and then, moving on with their lives.
So when you were younger and you felt like a free bird, free soul while you performed, do you still feel the same, Bernard, when you grow up?
Yes. But I mean, the process has become a bit more sophisticated, I think, because we now because you learn and you have this experience, you also learn the craft of performing, and there is certain things that are part of this craft, and it's a little, when you're on stage, there's certain things that maybe get a bit more focused than when you're at home and you're playing just for yourself. You would focus on other things. So these are things that you learn, and there are still, these beautiful moments, and in a way, those are the engine. There's this, what I call, maybe you could call it being in the flow or meditation. That state of, transcendence, which I think many of us are looking for, and I think especially audiences, lovers of Indian classical music. We are looking for this serene bliss. When our mind disappears and we just become part of this wave. And it happens, it doesn't happen in every concert now, especially when you are touring and you play 5 concerts in 7 days. It is very hard because we are not machines, but yes, you are always trying, and it is still there, yes.
Yeah, and how did the association or the click with Kathak happen?
What Kathak is, I mean, I was very lucky at the same time when I met my Guruji, Pandit Tavalkaji, I also met a fantastic Kathak guru, Shama Bataji.
Yeah,
She's based in Pune, and I hope many of our viewers will know her work.
yeah, of course.
And she took me under her wing really, and she started to take care of me because she came to Austria to do a project with my teacher. So there was a band, a project with Kathak dancers and jazz musicians that formed. It was called Rhythm Collage. So from that moment on, she sort of started to look after me. And when I was living in Pune, for example, when I was 19, I was there for 8 months. And she said to me, you can put your drums, you can practice in my dance institute. There's a little room that you can use. The only condition is that you have to come down once a day for chai, and you have to learn one kata composition.
So, anything that you remember from there? Kathak competition?
Of course, there is a lot. All the gintis are like ek do, ek do din, ek do din cha, ek do din cha panch, ek do din. There's a lot of compositions that use numbers. For example,
Yeah.
ek do, ek do din, ek do din cha, ek do din cha panch, ek do din cha panche, and so on. Or da de da 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 de da de de da da de da de da de da 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 de da 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 de de da de da de da 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 de da de de da da de da de. So these are the. Or of course there are the pamelos. I mean, all there's so many different dance compositions, but at that time it was really the more basic things like ek do, ek do din, things
So
like that.
how much of it did you get to learn basically in those few months of your stay?
Well, I was there for 2 months the first time. Then I came back next year for 8 months. Then I came back the next year for 4 months. I used to spend like 3 years there. Of you could say in the span of 6 years, between 18 and 24, I was there for about 3 years.
Mhm.
And then also I was always connected. I mean, also when I moved to London, for example, I was playing here with all the Carnatic musicians. I was playing with all not all, but most of the Kathak dancers. Those were my first performances. And for each Kathak performance, I had to learn some new repertoire. For each Carnatic performance, I had to learn some koways, and still to this day, that's the beauty when you collaborate with Indian musicians. You always try to learn something, change the ending composition, the tihai, instead of playing takit da, takit da, takit da. You could do something. I'll just say it because I know that we have a very, very respected audience here. So takit da, takit da, takit da, right? It would be the standard one, but you could just change that around. So takadin na, takadin din na, takit da, 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 takit da. So I've used this basic formula, but I've just changed the gap a little bit. And those are things that are still fun to do. With each performance, you're trying something a little bit different.
Yeah, modulated. So, what more percussion instrument do you have right now with you at home?
I have also actually kept this one here, which was invented by Trilo Kurtuji. It's called a thunder drum, and it creates the sound of thunder. Thunder, as you say in Indian pronunciation. And I'll just play a little improvisation if you want.
It is something close to damaru, we call it.
Well, yes, maybe. Yeah, you could say so. Can you hear the sound? So this takes me, into the realm of creating sounds, and I love to imitate sounds of nature. I have a lot of bird whistles, I have bird flutes, rattles made from trees, from leaves, from branches, from plants, and this is called a thunder drum. You can create this beautiful sound.
It's the first time I'm encountering this instrument, and the encounter is quite intense, quite good.
I hope you didn't get scared.
No, I loved it. Which country it comes from?
Well, as I said, Trilo Gurtuji, he invented it, but I think it originally comes from Australia. It's a beautiful, I tell you what, I think the idea was developed in Australia. It's basically a drum, and it has a spring at the bottom. And when you shake this tube, it can be a tube also. When you shake it, the spring starts to resonate, and therefore creates this thunder-like sound. And then there's a skin at the top. And what I'm doing here, for example, it's very simple. So this is not for the classical people. This is more, for the modern people. But, if I take the sound of na from the tabla, na, and put it here, and then in the middle I play din. It's just an imitation. It's just to take it as an inspiration. So na din din na din din na din din na din din. This would be a taker of tintal. And then in tabla, when you play on the left and on the bayan, you can play ge, and you can play ge, right? You can do the modulation. So just here I'm doing king kung. So I'm sort of, just by changing the pressure of my hand, I'm modulating the bass. So as I said, this is not classical, but it's just taking the inspiration and putting it on something that's not supposed to be like an instrument that you perform rhythms with. It's like a sound creator. But I love to put you can play rhythm on anything.
So this is a part of your rhythm diary that you are working on?
Well, the rhythm diaries, yes, the rhythm diaries started actually with my notes and my different compositions, but then it turned into project. So what I do is I travel around the world as part of my rhythm diaries, and I'm eager to meet percussionists and musicians all around the world and collaborate with them. So, for example, I did this in Europe. I traveled through Europe for 10 weeks, and in each city, 10 different cities like Lisbon, Paris, London, of course, Vienna, Ljubljana, Hamburg, and so on. In each city, I met another musician, and we worked for a week, and then we presented a concert together. So it was like a fresh collaboration, and all the concerts got filmed and recorded, and I released an album and a documentary. There's like little rhythm diaries about Europe. But then I did similar thing in Cuba, where I was for 5 weeks, and I collaborated with rumba musicians, with traditional Afro-Cuban musicians. Then I also was in Brazil earlier this year, where I studied, in fact, with candomblé musicians. So the rhythm diaries now become projects, and they become documentaries and albums which get shared.
So India is on your list?
Yes, definitely. In fact, I did have an invitation to do a rhythm diary project in India last year. It would have been fantastic. It was supposed to be 6 cities, and in each city collaborating with another classical musician, with fantastic musicians, but it then didn't work out, for infrastructural reasons, you can say. But the idea is there, and I'm hoping to do it at some point. But of course, I'm missing India very much, and I had my flight to India in March, I was supposed to be there in March for 2 weeks, and it just like a week before the lockdown happened, and then of course it couldn't happen, and I'm hoping to come back soon.
How affected is life there in London, since you're in London currently? How affected is the life there, the concerts and the programs? How much affected there?
It's totally, we're still in the lockdown. Now the lockdown has opened up a little bit. Some shops are opening up, but there is no performances at all.
Yeah.
The culture is totally frozen. I'm going to Austria in like 3 weeks time to perform there, which will be quite interesting. So the concerts are happening in Austria, and it will be quite strange, to be honest, But in terms of the lifestyle, yeah, I haven't been in a car for 3 months. I haven't been on a flight for 3 months. That hasn't happened in a long time. So it's resetting, our habits in the brain.
So my children were telling me, Mama, the poster that Bernhard uncle is there, he doesn't have a beard, but now when we see him here, he has a beard. So, anyways, we have Sanjeev Shankar. He is writing excellent insight. Talis Bhai, I have a question. How Austria has produced and gifted the world so many great artists in the past, so many centuries, including you.
That is very sweet of him. I think he's referring to another friend, because Sanjeev Bhai and we both worked with Anushka Shankar.
Yeah.
That's how we met and how we played together. And there is another Austrian musician called Manu de Lago.
Yeah,
he's a fantastic. Have you heard him with Anushka? Maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think Austria is necessarily. I think it just happens so that the Austrians who are passionate about rhythm, they end up in London, and then we bump into the Indian musicians here. But Austria is really known for Western classical music, and the beautiful tradition of Western classical music, which starts from Bach. The great composers, Johann Sebastian Bach, and then, for example, Mozart. Maybe you've heard Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and he was Austrian. But then Beethoven lived in Austria. I mean, Mahler, Schubert, Schumann, Alban Berg, Schönberg. Most of the influential classical composers have lived in Vienna, because Vienna used to be what London or, for example, New York is now. It's the hub where the musicians go to try new things. So, yeah, I'm still learning about my Austrian heritage. I still don't know enough, I have to say.
So, do you think that music is helping you to find a purpose in life?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think music, it gives you. I sometimes say that it is my therapy, really. Like when I'm whatever emotions I go through, music helps me to balance them, to experience them, and to balance them. And then the beautiful thing is, when you compose music, you put these emotions that you're feeling in the moment into a piece of music, and then you get over those emotions, but the piece of music remains, as a memory. So there are pieces of music which are now 5, 6, 7 years old, and they sort of store this emotion, but it's there. It's a way. It's like the most positive way of dealing with it. And as I said, this idea of going around the world, meeting people, bringing something, making people happy, it's incredible how welcoming people are. And I mean, I don't want to go too much into the personal details, but my story is really, if you think about my time in India, the way how I have been received and the way how I have been welcomed, it's unbelievable. It's something I would have never dreamt of, and I think music is a part of that. I mean, the people who live music, they don't think in these terms, that you are white, you're black, brown, or whatever. At the end of the day, we're all students and we're all servants of music. Even the big gurus, they are further ahead, they can see further, and they've got something that they can share, and they can help people to bring them further on the journey. But ultimately, they will tell you the same thing, music is greater than us. So I'm happy to be a part of this community, because we all think like that.
How brilliant. Very nice. And before we close the show, maybe something dedicated or as a tribute to your guru, or anything that clicks your mind, one rhythm, one piece of rhythm that we can have.
Yes, of course. Well, one of the most beautiful moments of my Guruji is, he loves to. He really believes in poetry, the poetry of tabla, and how through poetry you can learn, or you can experience, the beauty of sound, the beauty of the Indian classical tradition. So, as part of our talim, there's always sessions of reciting. So there is one rhythm which is called the chalan or a chand. It sort of goes round. You could say in the Western terms it's like a groove. And for all the technical musicians, for all the musicians out there that understand, it's, the rhythm starts anagat, which means just before the sum.
Yes.
Not on the sum, but before the sum. So everything you do has to start and end before the sum. So it's a tintal. Din din na taka din din na din din na din din na din din na taka din din taka dim dim taka dim dim taka dim dim taka da din taka da dim dim taka dim dim taka dim ta dim dim ta dim dim taka dim ta taka dim ta taka dim ta dim dim taka da dim dim taka da dim taka da din taka da taka da dim taka da din na ta dim taka da din na ta dim taka da
Beautiful. We have Sanjeev Shankar writing 4 and 7, please.
4.7. Is that a real request? You want that?
Yeah, he's asking.
Okay. Din din na din na. This is 7. Din din na din na din na din din na din na. Ta ti I ki I na ta ti I ki I na ta ki 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 ta ki ta din ta ki ta din ta ki ta din ta ki ta ka din ta ka ta din ta ki ta ka din ta ki ta ka
Thank you, Bernhard. Thank you. It was really beautiful. We really enjoyed it. I hope the audience also enjoyed the show. And please take care of yourself. And thank you for your musical journey, your experiences, your collaborations. May you have more shows coming up soon, concerts to start soon. That is what I can pray for currently, because we are all passing through a tough time. It's tough for musicians too.
Yes, it is. It is. Please, all my wishes to the viewers out there. I love India. I love you all, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Swetaji, for having me on the show, and for everybody who wants to know more about the drums or whatever I do, just Google me, Bernhard Schimpelsberger, and stop by the website. There is lots of videos there, or check on YouTube. And if you have any questions, just drop me an email and say hello.
Certainly. So viewers can get back to you if they have more queries. And abhi ke liye, namaste.
Namaste.
बहुत अच्छा लगा. तो उम्मीद करती हूँ कि दर्शकों को आज का ये कार्यक्रम बहुत पसंद आया होगा. कैसे वेस्टर्न म्यूजिक के साथ इंडियन म्यूजिक को कोलैबोरेट किया है बर्नार्ड शिम्पल्सबर्गर ने. तो कल हमारा जो सीरीज है उसका दूसरा दिन है वर्ल्ड म्यूजिक डे का, और कल हमारे साथ होंगे जाने माने परकशनिस्ट रतुल शंकर, और उनके साथ होंगे इलेक्ट्रिक गिटार पे अभिषेक मलिक एंड मैनाक नाग चौधरी, मैत्रेयी बास पे. तो आप हमारे साथ जरूर जुड़े रहिए. कल ये कार्यक्रम 7 बजे आप देख सकते हैं. और फिर परसों हमारे साथ एक और बेहतरीन आर्टिस्ट होने वाले हैं, लार्स मोलार, जो कि डेनमार्क से जुड़ेंगे, और जोनास जोहानसन एंड थॉर मैक्सन. So please stay connected, stay tuned, watch us at 7 p.m. tomorrow and the day after in the series World Music Day. Take care, bye-bye.